What's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we are back on GarageBand Mac doing how to sound like the Kid LAROI right here on GarageBand. Before I go into the steps, I'm just going to show you the final version of what it's going to be like. I'm done, so done. I'm done with all the games you play. I'm numb, so numb. I'm numb to all the pain you bring. I'm trying to figure this all out for myself. I don't need you or nobody else. I'm done, so done. Alright, so that's what we're going to be starting with, and we're going to go into how we got that sound. So the first thing before we do anything is, as always, we're going to start with the channel EQ. This is the EQ that I used. I'm using a Beats auxiliary microphone on my Beats Solo 3 headphone. So this EQ works for me on this microphone, but it may be different depending on your microphone. Especially if you have a higher end microphone. This is pretty low end. I'm just using it's basically like an Apple earbud microphone. It's gonna need a lot more configuration right here than you would if you have a higher end microphone. However, you can start with this and use it as a foundational point, and then play around with what you think sounds good. Just a quick overview. This is, so you're gonna cut off your low end. I raised the bass just a tiny bit because my mic is, otherwise it would sound pretty tinny and canny. It has a lot of this mid-end sounds, so I decided to cut that out. It's always good to cut out a little bit of your mid-end. And then I did a little bump right here with the blue, and another little bump to get a nice crispy high end over here. However, with the super high end, I took a little cut and brought that down. But everything else is pretty standard for what I usually do here. So yeah, we're gonna go on to our compressor next. This is what I use for my compressor. Because I was singing pretty loud, I had a pretty tight compressor. So I started out with VCA tight. If you go to compressor tools, VCA tight as my foundation, and then from there I move things around. So my gain is really high. That just depends on your own mix, like that's pretty arbitrary. The attack, kept it low at 18. My ratio is pretty high at 9 to 8, or 9.8 to 1. And then my compressor threshold is 23 is pretty low. So your threshold, your ratio, and your attack are really gonna decide how much your vocal is gonna be compressed and how tight it's gonna be. So you can make that higher or lower on personal preference. The next thing is our pitch correction. If you go into your little scissor right here, my pitch correction. If you go 80 and higher on your pitch correction, it's gonna be a lot of that heavy auto-tune that the Kid LAROI doesn't actually use. He uses some auto-tune, but it's pretty subtle, and he's a decently good singer himself. So less than 80 and below is what you want to stay at. I have 79, pretty high in that range, but it works as long as it's subtle, depending on how close you are to your pitch. Definitely just make sure that you don't make it sound like Travis Scott or something. My Deesser is our next step. That's going to get rid of some of that harsh sounds that you have in your S's, and it's pretty important to any mix and when you're doing your vocals. So the way my specific thing is, I go to female voice strong Deesser, and it's going to give you this frequency, and it's going to start you out at 16. So from there you can go lower and higher, and that's going to be the actual suppression of that like S and F sound that you hear. So depending on your microphone, where you're singing, the environment, it's going to be a little bit different from person to person, but this is how I started it. Platinum verb. Your reverb is pretty I would say imperative to getting your mix the way you want it to sound. So these are the settings I use for my reverb, and platinum reverb is my favorite GarageBand stock reverb. So you guys can take a screenshot of this, pause the video, whatever you need to do to copy these settings. Now, these settings are also another matter of personal preference. I like it like this. Doesn't mean you guys have to do it. You can make it a little more reverb, a little less reverb, more time, less cut. Alright, direction mixer. I keep a direction mixer on here, just a little bit of subtle spread when I'm using a single track. All that does is, if you put this to 180, and if you keep this from 1 to 2, it's going to spread your vocal out a little bit. Keep in mind, when it's spreading, it's going to drop the volume, so just adjust accordingly. Let's see. The next thing that I did, I kind of skipped on all these. This is just from a prior preset I have, so don't worry about the empty ones. Just follow the blue ones that I'm checking
I'm going to check this, and we're going to go to our stereo delay. So stereo delay, these are the settings that I used. I don't like a ton, but it gives a little bit of space, a little bit of echo that's just kind of like a little bit of flavor, just pretty subtle, and not too overt, because you don't want a ton of echo, and Kid LAROI doesn't use tons of echo, and sometimes artists like Travis Scott purposely does that. Kid LAROI doesn't do that. Just a little bit of subtle flavor to add some space and complement the reverb. So you can choose what kind of echo you want. I have a 1/2 triplet echo. You guys can change that depending what you like. I like that for this specifically, but you can change that as well. And that is going to be the steps for how to get your voice sounding like Kid LAROI on GarageBand. Now keep in mind, you gotta be a decently good singer to do this. If you can't sing at all, it's probably not gonna sound exactly like him, but these steps are definitely gonna get you closer to where you want that to be. Or if you're not trying to sound like the Kid LAROI but want just a similar sound in your own style, you can use this as a foundation point to experiment with your own sound. And as always, guys, that is going to be it for today. I hope you guys have an amazing holiday, and as always, have a great day, guys. Peace.